Okay, hello, and welcome to our Women's Space Vancouver June webinar, which is a conversation with Lauren Leggieri and Jamie Reed from LGBT Courage Coalition. And thank you for being here, whether you're here live or you're watching it later, watching the recording later. Before I introduce our guests, I just want to say a few quick words about Women's Space Vancouver. For anybody that's new, we're a grassroots feminist group. We're interested in protecting and reclaiming women's rights, including the right to retain spaces and organizations created for women. We stand for the protection of women-only spaces, including women's organizations, lesbian spaces, shelters for women fleeing violence, rape crisis centers, institutions where women are incarcerated. For example, we reject sex role stereotypes. We reserve the right to discuss and describe our bodies, our sexual lives, our health. We acknowledge the intersections of race, class, and colonialism on our oppression. We insist on the right to gather and speak without bullying and intimidation. And we stand for the protection and safeguarding of children and youth. We support true democracy. And today, we are so pleased to have as our two special guests, Jamie Reed and Lauren Leggieri. Many of you are familiar with them, but some who aren't, hopefully some who aren't are here as well. So they are the co-executive directors of LGB Courage Coalition. And I try and follow the activities of these two women in this organization, and it's dizzying trying to keep up with their travel schedules and speaking engagements and conferences. And I know that they also have private lives and other things in their lives. And so it's just hard to imagine how you fit it all in. And so I really appreciate that you fit us in this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. Thank you. So a lot of people here and watching this will know about your work, but and about you to some degree. And of course, nobody knows everything about any other person. But can you each briefly, we know about your work, and can you each briefly introduce yourself? We'll dig into some more details later, but who are you and how did you get started doing the work you do? And let's start with you, Lauren.
Sure. So I am a lesbian. I am educated, but also working class. So I think that informs a lot of how I think about things. I think we were talking just a little bit before that I had a very dramatic intersection with trans when I was very young, 20 years ago, when all of my friends started transitioning. And I do mean almost all of my butch lesbian friends, one after another. And within a span of 5 years, the core group that were my butch lesbian friends were all transitioned. And immediately there was a tension. It destroyed our relationships. And, that was my introduction to watch what I considered at the time, it seemed to me like homosexual conversion. Like willing, but it seemed like this was coming from a place of real discomfort with your role in and your discomfort in your sexuality and your presentation. So here I am. I've been canceled. My contracting business was destroyed, and whatever. I haven't looked back. It's just too important. So here I am.
Thank you. Jamie, your turn.
Yes, Jamie Reed. My background is that I hold a master's of science in clinical research, and I have an undergrad in anthropology. I became one of the first publicly named whistleblowers in the US after working in a pediatric gender center for nearly 5 years. My free press article came out in February of 2023. I lost my employment with the university within the next calendar year. And since then, we collectively formed a US-based nonprofit. In part, when I came into working in kind of the gender critical space, there was so much I didn't know because I came in not until 2023, and women especially had been working in this space for a decade before that. But we did form a nonprofit because we felt like as adult homosexuals, we had a very important role in working to stop, especially the medicalization aspect of trans. So we have been against the use of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, or surgeries. We work legislatively on that. So we try to get laws passed in different states within the United States. And I think one of the things that we have pivoted into in the last calendar year is that we are now more of a content producer. So I feel like we've grown into writing. We cultivate a number of writers within our members, and we have been learning how to produce a podcast in the past about year and a half, which has become a really interesting weekly project where we've been talking to a number of people. We've been really following the news through that venue. So one of the biggest things I think I've noticed since I came into the space is that we've been very nimble, and what needs to happen changes day to day to day. And we've been trying to kind of keep pace with, what is the best use of our time and what is the best use of our expertise so we can help with the most change.
Okay, great. Thank you. And you went into the topic of an overview somewhat of the work of the coalition. And I'd like to talk to you more about the podcast and some of the things that I've heard and sort of touch on and ask you about. Is there anything more you want to say about the makeup or operation of the Courage Coalition, or really it's a nonprofit and you go out and you as co-executive directors are the representatives out in the world doing a million things?
A million things. One of the things I think is really important on the back end that not a lot of people might know is that most of our members are adults who are gay and lesbian, but we also have a really strong group of parents of primarily adult trans-identified kids, where they as parents will say, I know my child is gay, or I know my child was, had come out as a lesbian and now is transitioning. And so we have found this really powerful kind of dynamic where we are partnering with a lot of parents who cannot be public facing, but then we can be public facing. And so that dynamic, I think, has really pushed us in a lot of ways to grow and to also, some of the individuals who provide the most in terms of the work, like the day-to-day work, are often parents or those who have a family member who is directly affected by this. I think that's been some of the most powerful relationship building that we've seen.
Yeah, I'd also say that that element of working with the parents really informs and really keeps us in this mode of being compassionate, right? Because it is so easy, and I find myself, and I'm sure the people listening will relate to this, that sometimes it's so easy to just be so angry about what's going on, about the medicalization of minors, about the destruction of women's spaces and rights, and the basic evaporation of any ability for lesbians to kind of come together in any kind of informed sense about who belongs in that group. So it's hard to watch, especially someone coming from the left. It's hard to watch people are good people, good liberals, do something so horrific and then point the finger at you and say that you're a bigot. And having to work with those parents really keeps reminding you that these people, whether they are the most in-your-face trans activists or not, they're all being victimized by the same thing. Yeah. So it's very helpful to have those parents there, because they're going to bring that humanity back when you feel like it's getting away from you.
Yeah. That's interesting. And that's important for sure. Just on that, are those parents, are some of them from the left too? Are they a broad spectrum of people that came from different places?
Most of them, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of them are from the
Yeah.
left. It is a broad spectrum. We do have a number of conservative parents, but the thing is, even though they're calling themselves conservative, I can't see much difference between them and an old school 90s liberal.
Yeah.
Like, these are
Right.
not homophobic conservative parents,
Right.
although some of them are religious.
Yeah.
They are not homophobic. They are not religious in the way that they want you to also be religious.
Right.
So we do have a good mix, but I will say most of them with adult kids that we are interacting with, they are of the left, and they are just as
Okay.
franchised as we are.
I'm happy to hear that, though, that because I know they're the ones that get sucked into it mostly, and so that's great. That's great to hear. Well, there's so many ways we can talk about all the issues that you've been working on, or all the ways you've been working on this big issue that you mainly focused on. So I've come up with a couple of specifics that you've either written about online or talked about on your podcast. So I'm going to start with them because you do a lot of interviews, and I wanted to sort of dig into some specifics that maybe we don't get to talk about that much. So Jamie, first, you wrote an essay recently called "What the Room Cannot Hold," and it really stuck with me. I've read it several times. I thought it was a wonderful piece of writing, as well as really insightful and interesting. And I love that you write, and you're also trying to think about and understand the people that you're critiquing. You know, you want to know where they're coming from and how this happened, because so you're not, there's nothing, you're not sort of those assholes, you're saying, how did this older gay man, where did he's had a life, he's had hardships, so I really found that tone too really refreshing. And so I wanted to know if it was the American Psychiatric Association conference, and it was a particular panel with 3 gay men had organized it, I guess, and then there were various trans-identified people on the panel. Would you talk a bit about the essay and the session, however you might want to do that, and what stuck with you that inspired that writing?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to talk about is that we have made a commitment as an organization that we don't ever want individuals like Jack Turbin, Jack Drescher, Dan Karasik. So these are the individuals who really have continued to push and promote trans, not just in young people, but as a general kind of thing. And one of our commitments is every time they show up at a conference, we want them to know that we're going to show up too. Be it that we're either going to be outside where we are handing out literature, we're talking to people who attend the conferences. But one of our big commitments is like everything that they're doing cannot be done in silence and hidden because it impacts too much. So when they're putting on formal panels at the American Psychiatric Association, it is our organization's part of our mission to make sure what's said in that room is able to be disseminated and known to the public. So one of the ways that essay even came about is that Lauren went to San Francisco with a small group of primarily women who live in that area. So one of the things we do try to do is partner up with local groups that are already on the ground. So we come in and we work with those on the ground, and they spent the day handing out literature, being present out in front of the conference. I'm back home, but also we knew a number of individuals who were inside the conference, and they leaked us audio out. And so I had this audio from these individuals who have been promoting trans for decades. And yes, all 3 are older gay men. Jack Turbin's not. He would be mad if we called him older. But have been promoting this for a long time. And this panel that they put on was 4 trans-identified individuals, 2 men who were identifying as women and 2 women who are identifying as men. And the concept that they were pushing is this concept that continues to be put out there that if we just all met enough trans people, that we somehow, would understand that they just are
they're just people just like you and me.
But also that they are the ones who are somehow being ostracized and harmed. And it's
Right.
so Drescher's concept was, I'm going to have 4 psychiatrists who are also trans-identified present about, woe is me, this is how hard it is for me to be a psychiatrist.
Mhm.
And I listened to this audio recording 3 or 4 times. And the last time I was listening to it, I was at, most cities have a gayborhood. I'm not really welcome in our gayborhood anymore. And so I was at a coffee shop listening to it. And what really struck me about this panel was who was not present. And so the 2 trans-identified men were speaking, and one of them is named Jamie Woods, and he decided to transition about the age of 63. And one of the things he's saying in his presentation is he was complaining about a judge treating him poorly, something about very vague about women's underwear, and I was not following what he was talking about. So I finally just sat there and did a bunch of background research. And
I will just say, you couldn't follow it unless you decided to do research into who this, like it
made no sense.
It didn't make any sense. Go on.
But he was presenting it as if I've been this victim. I've been this horrible victim of all of this transphobia. And I'm like, what is this man talking about? And when you dig in, you realize he was married for decades. He comes out to his wife and tells her, I'm going to transition. And she files a very reasonable request with the courts, which is, please don't spend our money on your medical transition until we have separated our finances and we're divorced. Feel free to do whatever you want later, but can we at least save our marital property? This man had already scheduled a $6,000 surgery. When he's complaining in this session about not being able to go buy, women's panties, he's spending thousands of dollars of their marital property to start this transition. And he's saying, woe is me. Whereas his wife is literally just saying, can we please just make sure that can we just divide the bank account first?
Get my share before you do this.
Yeah, I think there was also like a really large bill for electrolysis that
yes, I mean,
like thousands and thousands of dollars.
But this is what it's so frustrating to me. This is presented at a psychiatric conference as if this man has been put through the ringer, and like, poor him. And then you find out what he's really talking about. And it's like, that woman, that wife had every right to make a very simple request. This is our marital property. We divide it first.
Right.
And then the second trans-identified man who's presenting works with women who have experienced domestic violence. And the way that he's framing in this presentation, the way he's framing his ability to get in touch with his own femininity is through
the victimization of women, essentially.
Yes.
He essentially equates the violence that women endure under domestic violence, and he equates the suffering to somehow womanness,
that's womanness,
femaleness
for him.
And for me, I didn't hear this until after the conference, but after I heard it, I was like, wow, that is very disturbing to me.
Yeah.
You could hear he was like, he was kind of getting this validation in their suffering. And it mapped very much onto some of the more unsavory things we've heard from some of these men talking about, like being used sexually, and that makes them feel like women. I mean, it was very disturbing.
It was.
And again, at a psychological conference, to have no one dig any deeper than, oh, I feel bad because people won't let me wear the underwear I want. And there's no talk about the victimization of his wife. Like,
right.
What happened? Your whole marriage fell apart? Like, what happened to her? There was no talk about, okay, well, what about the women in the domestic violence shelters? Are they
Maybe they don't
comfortable
want him working
with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, nothing, not even
Wow.
touched remotely. So it was a clown show.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yes. And then there were two trans-identified women who both seemed to be expressing their own very serious psychological issues, talking about how they're so anxious they can't leave the house. But they were both lesbians. They're both women who talked about, one was married to another woman. I mean, this was what was presented as the APA trans offering in 2026. And so the piece that I wrote about was really a lot of my own reflection about when you have presentations like this, or when this is still the narrative that's driving the medicalization and the trans narrative in psychiatrics, which is that women are absent. The concept that women might have our own autonomy or our own voice in those spaces was completely sidelined. And that to me is something that I think I've really grown into. I think when I first came out as a whistleblower, I was very focused on the medicine and when it happened to young people. And the one place where I have grown so much is, working with people like Kara Dansky and working with other groups that, have really tried to also focus and bring the question around where are women at in this picture? And that has really, I think that's been one of the areas where I personally have grown the most into now understanding how important that is in centering our work, that it's not just about that the evidence is poor, that children are harmed. What I find so powerful and impactful now is I can talk about all of that. And when people say, okay, for adults, it's still their right, that's when I feel like I fully now have an understanding about where does your right intersect with women's rights, and where are you saying that our rights don't matter? And I think that APA piece was just a really good example of how the medicine and the psychiatric associations and all of this is still promoting trans is still completely ignorant to what is the downstream effect on women and children and families.
Right.
And that's why, a lot of our work is you really can't promote the concept of transition as a neutral act because its impact is always on women, girls, and families.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the catalyst of when because originally it was the LGBT Courage Coalition.
Right.
We just got to a point where it was like, how can we, as especially lesbians and gay men in good faith, say, well, we're just drawing this arbitrary line at 18 when we in the background have so many parents saying, my kid at 18 was sucked into this, my kid's 23. We know clinically that you are not fully developed, like developmentally, until about 25. And how can we say to children, this isn't an option? Because I always think I'm a big fan of Carl Jung. And one of the quotes that always sticks with me, especially in this area, is that he said, children are not educated by what we say, they're educated by what we do. So how can we say you can't transition is bad because you're under 18, but if you're over 18, it's fine? Because kids are watching us. They're watching us all the time. They're trying to figure out how to be adults by watching us. And in particular for young lesbians, if all the adult lesbians they see, and I've had young detransitioned lesbians tell me this, the only adult lesbians they ever saw transitioned. They were all transitioned. So they thought that's how you grow up. That's how you become an adult. You're just going to become trans.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I'm so glad that you wrote that piece, Jamie, and that you've gotten more involved in the idea of where it intersects with women and women's rights. And, we also, of course, all of us have started to see more and more and more and more examples around the world of who it's impacting and how. And, Yeah. And the not drawing the line at 18. I mean, something can't be terrible and then be just great at
Right.
a certain birthday. Um, so, well, that leads me into, I mean, there's so much more we can talk about there, but I'd like to get you to talk a bit, Lauren, because when I became aware of you working with this coalition in the last, I guess it's been a year or two, a couple of years. But when the podcast started, and it's called Informed Dissent, and for those of you that aren't checking it out, check it out on just Google Informed Consent or go to wherever you look at your podcasts or listen. Jamie was interviewing you, I think. So it was an introduction to you, who's our new co-host here, because there's 3 co-hosts, right? Of that podcast. And sometimes some of you or sometimes all of you are there, and you often have really interesting guests. So I heard about your story, really, and how you were more quietly canceled. I mean, it wasn't quiet in your life, I'm sure, but you were cast out of your own community in a less public way than Jamie was, because you didn't write an article that was national wide about your being cast out of your community. It's a very important story. I think it's one that isn't told enough. You've touched on it a bit, and I'm just wondering if you could share a bit more about that.
I think you should start, though, that you came to the endocrine conference.
Oh yeah. So the way I got really canceled. So there was a lot of tension for me because I had always kind of been pushing back a little bit about the trans thing since I watched my friends transition and saw how just it devastated their life and their mental health. 2015 was when I really started being vocal because I realized we were doing this to kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like insane to me. I had read an article about Gavin Grimm. If you guys don't know, Gavin Grimm came to national fame in the United States when I believe he was in Virginia.
But yes.
This is a young girl, and I'm trying to tell this from a perspective of, like, I wasn't really sure what was going on, right? So Gavin Grimm, there's a lawsuit saying that, and from everything I'm reading, it's just saying him.
Him, yeah.
So I'm confused. This Gavin Grimm, trans, not allowed to use the boys' restroom in his high school. And I was like, high school? That's pretty young. And then I'm reading this article, and the article, it's probably 2015, 2016. So before it was a national conversation, it's very detailed about how he has been on testosterone for over 18 months, and he's already had his double mastectomy. And then that's when I was like, well, wait. You're talking about a girl and hasn't graduated high school, so they're 16, 17, and I'm doing the math, and you've had this kid on testosterone for 18. Then you're talking about you're talking about a freshman in high school, and this kid has already had a double mastectomy, and I'm like, wait, what? We are physically changing the bodies of kids? This is probably just a young lesbian. And I sent this article to a bunch of people, expecting them to be like, oh my God, I can't believe we're physically doing this to kids. And what I got in response was, that's so fucked up. Why don't they just let him use the bathroom? And I was like, but did you read the whole part where
Right.
you're talking about physically altering the body of a 14-year-old girl who's probably just a lesbian?
Right.
So that's when I really started to get vocal. Socially, people were starting to distance themselves from me, even though many of the lesbians I spoke to agreed, but they knew I was toxic. I kind of got away with it for a while because I was self-employed and I was a contractor. And to be honest, most people could give a shit about a contractor's political views or views on anything. They just want you to fix it.
Did you show up? Did you bring your tools? Yes.
Yeah, that's all they cared about. So I kind of got away with it for a while. And then 3 years ago?
Yeah.
It was 3 years ago. She had called me and said, we're going to do this action. We're going to go to the Endocrine Society conference in Boston to just give out some information, have some conversations.
Right.
And in the process of that, I got photographed, which I was fine with. I got photographed because it was also June, so it was a big Pride Month sign behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one sign that said, most gender nonconforming kids grow up to be gay, and another sign that said, stop transing gay kids.
Mm-hmm.
There was a picture. I posted it on my Facebook. At the
Mm-hmm.
time, it was only going to people who I was friends with.
Right.
Someone screenshotted that picture and just proliferated it through every social media my business was on.
Right.
Somebody sent it to the LGBT Chamber of Commerce in Philadelphia, the Small Business Association for LGBT. They took me off all the listservs, and it was just relentless. Whoever got a hold of it was relentless with it, and they would post this picture and call me a bigot in any like handyman chats. Like it was just, I became toxic.
Wow.
And I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't care. And I kind of, like I said, I kind of skated by because I was self-employed. So I
Mm-hmm.
had been expecting there to be a problem at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect the fervor and the instant like drop off of clients.
Wow.
Like I did not expect it to be so just insidious. It was insane for a couple weeks, and then just you really don't recover so easily from that because it's all reputation in that business. And again, like for months, anytime someone recommended me, this picture would pop up again, and people knew like, okay, I can't call this girl.
Mm.
But I couldn't stop talking about it. I mean, I was very concerned about the kids, but also like I was living in an area that was like becoming gentrified. I mean, it was still kind of rough. So there was a lot of like lesbian couples that were moving in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very rough neighborhood in Philly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So almost every lesbian that had moved in this 4 years that I've moved to that neighborhood within a 2 block radius of me, they're all transitioned. One of the partners was, all of them were transitioning.
Right.
And I'm like, how can nobody see this as a problem? It's all of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of us. So
Wow.
that's how I ended up getting more involved because I was like, this is when we're trying to ruin people's lives for saying maybe we should think twice about giving sex change procedures to children, like it just made me all the more motivated to speak up
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I saw the silencing happening with the women that, like I said, so many of them would agree. They agreed and they would be like, it'll ruin my business. I'll get fired. And then a lot of them just quietly walked away from contacting me.
Right.
So,
Right. And there's
and
got to be a better way for, that's, thank you for that. And I'm sorry that happened, but I'm glad that you're here doing what you're doing. But I
yeah,
would have thought, well, one thing I thought as you were talking, I thought, where are all the TERFs that are out there needing handiwork? Why didn't they all just,
yeah,
they'd want to grab you, right? If you lived where I lived and I wanted to hire a handyman, I would be saying, I want her.
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm sure I could have gotten like a little bit of work that way, but
Yeah.
in a liberal area like that,
Yeah.
it really is. I mean, people that like, again, people that 100% agreed with me were afraid to be seen with me because it's such a liberal area that like you risk
Yeah.
your job or your social status
Yeah.
just by being seen with someone
Yeah.
that thinks is a transphobe.
Well, this is where all of those people, and because I'm one that gets frustrated with people's fear, I want people to be more courageous. If there's a bunch of them that feel that way, I feel like talk to each other, form a circle, realize that there's 8 of you or 10 of you or 20 of you, and then you can all come out at the same time and say, and then you've still got your community, and the ones that aren't there anymore can kind of drift off or yell at you or whatever they're going to do. But it's just forming, alone we feel more vulnerable, but together we are a force. And so I would hope more people would do that. But anyway, I think that's an important story, though, Lauren. I saw it myself much more gradually. I think when we were talking earlier, I said I started to see lesbians start to transition in the late 90s. But I know that it's been a much more huge thing with younger people as far as numbers. Although I still hear occasionally of women I've known or met, and they're 60 or 50, and they've decided all of a sudden, after all these years, they're a little less feminist than they used to be, and they're a little more trans.
Yeah, I've seen a
So
lot of middle-aged lesbians
yeah,
start to
yeah,
transition. Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. Um, well, thanks for sharing that story. I think that these things need a lot more conversation in the gay and lesbian community, and I'm glad to see that some gay men are also speaking out, and they see their own being threatened and operated on and all of that stuff, and seeing the results, the horrible results. So for both of you, and however you want to do it, and spontaneous as you like, or if things pop into your head, but all the traveling and educating and organizing and lobbying and testifying, all that you do across the country. First, have there been any surprises? What are some of the surprises, good or bad? It'd be great to hear some good ones mixed in with the bad. Do you have anything to
Yeah,
say about that?
I'll jump in just to start. One of our biggest kind of achievements in 2025 was in the state of New Hampshire. So it was one of the first kind of bluish, purplish states that we really cracked kind of that East Coast wall where a ban on puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries was put into place. But one of the most amazing elements that I saw in New Hampshire that then I also saw replicated in the state of Nebraska in 2026 is that I have found some of our most intense allies are women legislators who I am often in awe of their depth of knowledge on these topics. And so I think of Lisa Mazar was a elected representative in New Hampshire, Erica. There are about 3 or 4 women elected representatives in New Hampshire. They were all Republicans, but they understood this issue backwards and forwards with this incredible depth, and they pushed legislation really hard in that state. And then in 2026, we have an amazing representative in Nebraska who this has become basically her entire fight. So fight over prisons, over locker rooms, bathrooms, sports, medicine. I love seeing these women in office, in public office. They're running bills. They're proposing the legislation. They're really trying to also broaden coalitions to bring people in. That's been one of the things I find so positive.
Yeah.
The negative is that, every time I testify, I will say over and over again, I've been a lifelong Democrat. The Democratic Party has really basically moved in no way, shape, or form to even be open to a conversation. I was in Ohio recently on a bill that would just make it so it is not considered child abuse to raise your children to understand that sex is binary.
Yeah.
And the Democratic individuals that I was, testifying in front of, the things that they're in opposition to dumbfound me.
Yeah.
And very recently was out in California and was speaking, toe to toe with Scott Wiener, who will probably be an elected representative at the federal level soon. He'll be taking probably Nancy Pelosi's seat. And gay man, and we're a
Worlds
million
apart.
Yeah, we're
Worlds
so
apart in our understanding of this topic. Yeah.
And what is becoming really disheartening for me is the lack of any movement. We're talking about, the party I've been a party of for life, and
They won't even ask questions. That's the thing. They won't even
engage.
ask. They will not even engage. They're just not going to ask.
No,
We're not going to ask.
they've locked it down, and it's so hard to get through that, isn't it? What about that young man? Is his name Wheeler?
Yeah.
Jonah Wheeler?
Yeah, Jonah Wheeler.
So
He's
is he a standalone? Is he just all alone?
Yeah.
New Hampshire.
So what's really, I think, really important when we think about Jonah Wheeler is he is a young man
Mhm.
who grew up with a cohort of other individuals who were pushed trans in their high school. He saw his peers transition, and his takeaway from this was that it hurt people.
Yeah.
It hurt not only the people who were transitioned, but it was hurting the women around them, kids. And so one of the reasons why he is so strong in this issue, in part, is because of how young he is and what he grew up seeing. He is an amazing young representative. I text with him often. We share stories and we, keep in touch.
Nice.
He does give me some hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does. I would say, yeah, that's the thing is like, as bleak as this whole topic can be, there are moments where I start to see, and I hear it a lot from much younger people.
Mhm.
Yeah, the younger kids are seeing this without the color of I'm left, I'm right. It's actually the adults who are much more tribal on this than the kids. For example, when I was in San Francisco, out front of the psychiatrist convention, so this is a very liberal city, the most liberal city, I would argue, San Francisco. And this 20-year-old girl who was doing her own canvassing for like Nature Conservatory, she came over and was talking to us and was like, I just want to know what you guys are doing here. Like, I think I know, but like, could you explain? And so we just had a really good conversation with her. And this girl is 20. She's 20 years old. She has had multiple friends detransition and transition. She has seen the physical harms. She said, my friends that thought they were trans and now they don't, like their bodies are messed up. My friends who are trans, who are still identifying that way, their bodies are really messed up. They're sick. They're mentally not doing well. Like she was like, I just think you should have to be fully developed. You should have to be at least 25. There should be a lot more checks and gatekeeping to it. I mean, this is a 20-year-old. And I mean, but it's also, I mean, so it's positive, but it's also sad because the reason she understands this is because she has already had multiple friends harmed by it.
Yeah.
She said, you can't take any of this back. Like she said she has a friend that's really struggling because she'll never look female again.
No.
And again, I just want to reiterate, this is a 20-year-old with multiple friends who are now lifelong patients, at best, completely altered for the rest of their life.
Yes. Yes. And even we live in a small town here and we see it, and the girls, young women, I think, I'll be somewhere and behind, I see these, I said, oh, I'll say to my partner, oh, there's a lesbian couple, there's some young lesbians. And then I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to see what happens when they turn around, and you turn around and they maybe both have had double mastectomies. And I think, I don't want to hope that they had cancer, but I think they probably didn't. And then, that's a complex thing to begin with, because of course, many of us know women who had to have mastectomies because they did have cancer. And it's rampant. Yeah. Small towns, big cities. And it's not in our face as much as in a bigger city or certain neighborhoods of a bigger city, but
it really depends because it depends on, is there a college? Is there a university with like a medical college? Because there are some areas of the country that aren't near big cities. And we've had people tell us that, like, we have one friend is in upstate New York, not in New York City, not anywhere near New York City, kind of upstate New York is kind of rural. 9 children in her son's, what grade is he in? 4th grade class. 9 children medicalized, not identifying as trans, medicalized.
So on puberty blockers, they're on puberty.
Yeah, no, 5th grade. So she has said, like, you can tell now because these kids who have been on puberty blockers, like her son is at that age where like he's starting to become a young man. And you're not seeing that with these kids. They're totally not getting what's going on. They're not understanding why their friends are going boy crazy or girl crazy. Yeah. They don't have the same, their interests are still very juvenile.
Right.
Like it's causing social problems for these kids. But again, we're medicalizing so many of them.
So
Like,
cruel. Yeah.
50.
So unbelievably cruel. Maybe just a quick mention for those who don't know Jonah Wheeler. He's what's his role? He's a member of the Senate.
Yes, he's an elected representative in the state of New Hampshire.
Okay.
Tiny state. New Hampshire is amazing.
So for people here that don't know him, look him up and follow him. And he's delightful and smart and brave. And he's...
And I'll also say he's African American.
Yes.
And one of the other elements that we have seen when we do see or work with some of the few Democrats that will split off, it is often Black Democrats, maybe Hispanic individuals who have a little bit less trust in the institutions.
Right.
And have a little bit more openness to recognize that institutions can go wrong and can hurt vulnerable people. And so we have seen some more engagement in those communities.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah. So are there some that speak to you, some politicians that speak to you and say off the record, I'm on your side or anything like that? Or do they have to be?
Not to us personally, but they will say it to others.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have said, I believe, that we've definitely heard from other representatives that like their colleagues know, will tell them they know and still vote on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is even more terrifying, I think.
Yeah.
Would understand the issue and still
just fall apart.
On party lines. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we have about 10 more minutes before we're going to open up and get some questions from people, but maybe I've got a few things and you can decide what you want to say or talk about. I was thinking about asking what some gains are that you're happy about. Who have you seen change their minds through this work? I mean, you mentioned that one older lesbian, if there's anybody else. And what are still the biggest barriers? I mean, that's a big question. You know, we have a different kind of country here, so you have there's so much power in every state. And so it seems like you're starting over in every single place that you go. I mean, provinces here have some power, but there's much more federal oversight. But just some things just random things that you might want to mention that have been important to you in the last little while. You know, things have been changing. So the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever you want to say that has any nuggets, any changes, anything. Yeah.
Yeah, we do have a process here in the United States. So you're correct. We are very much state-based rights. States can make their own laws and have a lot of regulatory power within those state lines. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's going to be, I think, a big part of the election cycle here coming up in November is that right now we have 3 states that are running something called ballot initiatives. Mm-hmm. So this is in states that are very, 3 of those states are very, very blue. So the state of Washington, Colorado, and then Maine did this kind of grassroots ballot initiative process where they had to collect a certain number of citizen signatures to get something on the ballot where then everybody can vote on it.
And is blue Democrat or?
Yes. Blue is Democrat and red is Republican.
Okay. Here we have blue conservative and red is liberal.
Yeah. Go back. But so one of the things we've been supporting and we've seen a lot of movement on is this kind of initiative process within the states. So one of the things I find really impactful by that is that we have now 3 states where we have these grassroots organizations that are emerging, that are pulling together, and they really are crossing party lines. So in Washington state, they have a bill to protect women's sports. In Colorado, they have a bill to protect women's sports. They also have a ban on surgical procedures as one of their bills. And then the state of Maine had a very strong bill, again, to protect women's sports that we're seeing a lot of issues at their state level about whether or not it'll be on the ballot. But this is just yet another, basically, tactic. So what we're seeing, I think, is that we've seen most of the changes we're going to get at the state level here in the US. At the federal level, we've had a lot of regulatory agencies try to make some inroads. The FTC just had a huge filing against WPATH that I really can't talk more about. But
What's the FTC stand for, Jamie?
the federal
It's the Federal Trade Commission. So here in the United States, they have a lot of they're basically a watchdog agency trying to stop people from or stop commercial fraud, basically.
Okay.
The consumer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think my takeaway from the past maybe 24 months is that there really is no all of these are worthwhile attempts, tries, and any time when you can get exactly what you were talking about earlier, which is you can get an isolated person linked up with 8 or more, or we can get, a small group together. In Maine's, it was an organization called Maine Girl Dads. So this is where we saw dads who had girl athletes
Right.
to come together.
Right.
We're seeing more of this. This is truly a grassroots, like 70-30, 80-20 split issue that should really unite people.
Yes.
That's been a really positive, impactful change that we've seen over the past.
Yeah. So people are building coalitions or little organizations and linking up with others. And that is the way. I agree that is the only way it's going to change. I mean, at the same time, well, there's legislative lobbying and other things, but those will all feed up into that too. The hardest thing I imagine, and you can tell me this if or not, is these left-wing people that you or I might agree with on many, 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 many things. And then this one thing they've dug their heels in as if it's somehow special, unique, the most important thing. Have you seen ever anybody from that cohort slide over or at least back away from what they were doing? Is there any hope for any of those?
Yeah, I think that there is. I think that there is, because I always use this analogy is that I have never once, not once in the years I've been doing this, met anyone who started out gender critical and then was like, you know what? We should just trans everybody.
That's right.
It doesn't work it doesn't go that direction.
It doesn't.
People are only waking up. And when you talk to people who we call it peaking, as you know, it is like the scales fall from your eyes and you're like, oh, wow, I see everything differently.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of hope that eventually people are going to get where we're at. I think, and Helen Joyce talks about this, I think the people who are not are obviously going to be the people who have medicalized themselves or have medicalized their children.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be, that's a much heavier lift.
Yes.
To help them change their mind. But every day, more and more people, again, most of the people we work with are disaffected liberals, and they're disaffected because of this.
Yes. Yes. And I think one other thing that Helen Joyce has said in a conversation we had with her too, is that people always want to know how to talk to other people about this, because we hold so much information and it's so easy to go on a rant about everything. And then everybody's just like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
And that people, she always said, find one thing that's really important to you within this whole, crazy hurricane of madness, or one or two things, and get really good and clear about being able to talk about it in a couple sentences. And that's the easiest way to have a conversation with people without bombarding them and sending them running. And I know with you, Lauren, when you're talking to people, you use the Stop Trans and Gay Kids with the knowledge that it's not all gay kids that are going to grow up gay. And most, most trans kids are homosexual.
Most kids grow up to be gay.
So, talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
I think it's very hard to look at me.
Yes.
And tell me that's not true.
Yes.
Right. It's very hard to look at me and say there's no connection there, because I know that there is.
Yes.
I mean, these are the things that, and even my sister and my mom now will use that.
Yeah.
Like, this is my sister.
Yeah.
Like, or here's a picture of my sister. Like, I know what she was like when she was a kid.
Yeah.
She did all of this criteria. I mean, when I first started talking to my mom about this, I read her the DSM checklist, and she was just horrified. She was horrified. She was like, that sounds like you. How would I have known the difference? And I was like, exactly. They don't.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what people will say. Well, there's a difference. I'm like, okay, well, look at this criteria. I'm telling you, as a gender non-conforming homosexual, I hit all this criteria. Where in this diagnostic is it saying, is it telling you how to differentiate? And there isn't.
Yes.
And I firmly believe that, yes, I know it's not all gay kids now, but the reason it got so far is because society accepted it for gay kids.
Yes. And it was pulled into the whole alphabet of, we're all in this together, and this is just the next freedom fighting group. Yeah. And Jamie, what about you? You've got the personal experience of working in a clinic. Is that where you go if you met someone for the first time and they didn't know you and you wanted to say one, what's the topic? Do you have one?
I really like to ask people questions.
Yeah.
I like to walk them through their own, like, okay, if you support this, like, talk to me about what do you support? What aspect? What element? How does this line up? How does this work?
Mm-hmm.
The ideology itself crumbles upon itself when you pull at it in any form. It is not based on any sort of stable logic, ethics, moral basis. And so I just love asking people questions.
Right.
I want them to tell me, because then you can see where it falls apart in their own description.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't even have to point out that it just fell apart.
No, that's right. You can just sit there and
just like, okay.
And smile.
With the question. Sometimes just leaving someone with the question is enough to get them to think on their own. And then I always like to say, like, different aspects of this resonate with people. When you ask people, like, when did they peak? It's for everyone. Some people, it is the medicalization of children. Some people, it's sports. Some people run into someone in the women's bathroom and go through weeks of trying to excuse why there was a schizophrenic homeless man in their bathroom. And then they're like, oh, wait, this is all crazy. I mean, people come from it from way different places.
Yeah.
So just keep talking. And I think that's great advice. You don't have to be an expert in every area of this, but be an expert in the area that means the most to you. And when you meet somebody else where that this area is very important to them, you're gonna be able to have a conversation with them. And really, it only takes one conversation that gets people's minds thinking, because just like what she just said, this whole thing falls apart with 5 minutes of critical thinking.
Yeah.
It really does all fall apart with just asking the right questions.
Yeah, for sure. That's right. Well, we're going to open the Q&A now. And while that's happening and people are getting their questions in there, I'm just going to ask you, people are going to type questions in and we can pull some out from there. Do you have colleagues, networks, connections in Canada, and how do you work together, if you do, with what's going on in Canada versus the US, which I know is quite different politically and in many other ways. But
I think the most cooperative we are with our members in Canada is through sharing information, because it is just such a different legal system and governmental system that there are just certain tactics that we do that are not going to carry over.
Right.
But dissemination of information, and then the medical professionals writing these medical papers, that's going worldwide. Like, that is a worldwide effort. There's people from every country writing papers trying to get the entire medical establishment to change course. So I would say that's the most cooperative effort with us, with anyone in any other country. So the UK as well.
Right.
I'll just add, we work closely with a couple other organizations. One of the most impactful is probably SEGM, so the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine, and a lot of our overlap is through some of the medical professionals that they have on the Canadian side.
Right.
I do think, however, with our last national election, we have seen some split off. So I feel like for a long time we were parallel in a lot of ways, what was going on around these questions of gender. I think we've seen a little bit of a split with what our federal government is doing now. We have a federal government that is trying to address this in a different way, maybe not very successfully with our court system.
Right.
But we have seen our trajectory, I think, break off from Canada's a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And what like somebody was asking how many or gender affirming care clinics have closed and how often are they reopening after they close, or what's happening with the actual
I don't know that we can answer how quickly or often they're reopening, because it really has just been recent that they're starting to pull out. Again, our system is very different, so we can get these large hospital systems that rely on federal funding. That's been the Trump administration tactic, is to deny federal funding if you do any of these procedures. It is yet to be seen what happens with a new administration. So I am hoping what is happening is that they're pulling the funding. The risk management is coming in and saying, we should not do this if we're going to lose funding, or there are some problems here. I think that this tactic has given people an opportunity who otherwise were afraid to speak out, but understood that there were problems, to pull back on this.
Right.
I'll say two examples. So in the state of New York, specifically New York City, they elected a new mayor, Mamdani, who is a self-proclaimed democratic socialist. In his election, he was trying to promise $65 million and that it would become a trans mecca and that trans kids would be able to come and utilize this money. That was what was the campaign promise. What we see actually come to fruition is very recently $19 million was spelled out, but that it was only going to be limited to the medical transition of adults. And so we're seeing promises that are then being scaled back because of what the federal government is doing. Another really interesting, very recent development was in the state of Colorado.
Yeah.
So Colorado at the federal level was told you will lose your federal dollars. So in Colorado, the True Center closed. The parents of the trans-identified patients took them to court because Colorado had passed some state laws around trans and their human rights. And the state government said, the court said, you have to reopen.
Right.
Well, the doctors within the gender center just said, you know what? We might be reopened, but we're not willing to prescribe, because they consulted with independent attorneys who told them you're at risk. Yeah. And so much of this is playing out in courts all over the country right now, but it is very interesting to watch how, yes, there are a lot of clinics closing, and there's a lot of back end work happening.
I do also think that some of these civil trials for the detransition kids that they've successfully won their court cases. Again, very liberal New York, the Fox Marion case, she won her suit. And I think that a lot of the medical legal counsel is looking at these lawsuits in very liberal places, because again, there was another one that settled, and she's out of Portland, right?
Yeah, right.
Washington. So again, another blue state is seeing multi-million-dollar awards to people who have been harmed. Fox Marion was a minor, but this other woman, Camille she was an adult when she was medicalized.
Okay.
So she even got a settlement.
Right.
So I think that's helpful. The problem with that tactic here in the United States, again, is the statute of limitations for medical malpractice, which is another avenue that we're trying to change legislatively. Ironically, that's a stronghold for Republicans here.
Right.
Republicans don't like to mess with the statute of limitations. They don't.
Yes, right.
Yes.
Sued.
Yes.
So they're their own. They're like their own worst enemy when we're like, we have a
Yes.
real bill that could really help, and they're like,
Right.
oh,
we don't want to go back there. What I did back then, no.
Yeah. Exactly.
Somebody was asking, what alternatives are there springing up available to gender distressed kids? Are there any places kids can go that aren't there where there won't be detransition or won't be transitioned? Is that happening at all, or is it illegal to talk
If you're
about?
looking to transition, you could find it in the States, even if you had to move states. There was recently the Texas Children's Hospital settlement, and in the stipulations of that settlement was that they have to set up a detransition clinic. I'm not sure what that looks like, right? Like,
Right.
Does that look like giving phalloplasties to boys who have had vaginoplasties? Because I don't think that's great.
No.
I would like to see a real discussion about what that means, because this word detransition is often thrown around, but you can't detransition.
No.
You can't take this back.
No.
So
What about kids who haven't transitioned yet, though, and they need to go somewhere? Are there doctors or
you're starting to
counselors?
see therapists? Yeah, you are starting to see therapists break away.
Okay.
But again, that's a very dicey thing. Like, do you want to say you're a non-affirming therapist?
Right.
Then the kid already has an idea, the parent already has an idea that you're kind of limited in what you're going to allow. Like, it's just a very complicated area, but there are professionals both in mental health and medical professionals that are trying very hard to help these kids and put systems in place for them to get the help that they need. Here in the States, there's also the issue of coding, medical coding for billing, our insurance, the way our insurance works, which is just a nightmare.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's efforts being undertaken. We've yet to see what they're going to look like.
Right. Okay. There's a couple of questions in the chat. Somebody's asking, maybe this is for you, Jamie. What is the most effective question you found to break somebody's cognitive dissonance? Is there one question that sort of people go, whoa, or like maybe it would vary between people?
I think it is so person dependent, but I also know that I try to approach people with genuine empathy and curiosity.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think it's as much I want to engage with you as it is also, I genuinely care. Like, why do you think that this is like,
right.
Where are you coming from this? What do you think, works best for you here? Why? I like having relationships with people, even if they don't agree with me. And I like talking to people who don't agree with me. So
yeah. So it's more the approach, really. Yeah. That's smart. Yeah. Here's another question that's a bigger topic, but an interesting one. Have you seen a rise in misogyny among young women who are transitioning? I saw a young woman who identifies as a trans man, and I asked her why she spoke about, and when asked, she spoke about not wanting to be a victim of male violence and all the other barriers that patriarchy creates. It feels defeatist, like I can't beat him, so I'll join him. Do you see that?
I definitely saw that amongst my friends who transitioned. It's like they kind of adopted the most toxic elements of masculinity that they hadn't displayed as butch lesbians, but now as trans men were very I had a lot of issues with that. I mean, it really did deteriorate all of my relationships with them, because they simultaneously hated me for being who I am, but they seem to also want to forget any aspect of themselves that had been ever considered female or feminine or woman or anything. So Yeah, I think a lot of these girls do suffer from internalized misogyny.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're the lesbians that are transitioning to escape their sexuality, or the heterosexual girls who are transitioning to escape their sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just their sex bodies. Like, yes, I would say that that's definitely, it's a way to describe it, just to say it's an internalized misogyny. Yeah. Like, women is lesser than, women is weak, woman is going to be a victim.
And they don't want threatening male attention either.
Yeah.
Or just unwanted male attention even. Yeah. Yeah. I know in the UK, women have really been organizing within unions and other organizations to try and change the mood there, which changes the mood and the belief systems and in workplaces. And somebody here was asking a question about unions, but I'm sure that's not one of the areas you go and work in. I've got questions on my phone from before, and then there's a few in the chat too, but
no, I will say that, like, we are trying to work in
the teachers
unions
to
try to dialogue happening within the teachers unions. I think unions are much different here, though, in the States than they are in Canada. Unions have changed just drastically in this country from when I was a kid. Particularly the teachers union. I know plenty of teachers that feel like it's just a political apparatus now, and it doesn't really represent a lot of teachers and the way they think and the way that they students.
Right.
But we are trying to work quietly behind the scenes within certain states, teachers unions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chris,
you're reading the question.
Can I take this question? I love this question.
Yeah.
So it says, do you have a language alternative to gender affirming care?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Okay. So number one, the other side now has disavowed this term and they're trying to get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So they've done some pretty good polling and they've looked at this and they realize this is not a good term. So they don't want this term used anymore either. Personally, when I'm talking like one-on-one to individuals, I just want to know that we're both talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
So my biggest thing is, are we talking about puberty blockers in kids, the use of sex hormones? Are we talking about kids having surgeries? Like, are we talking about the same thing? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't really care if somebody is using gender affirming care as the phrase, as long as I know we're talking about the same thing.
Right.
But if I'm presenting or if I'm testifying, the things I care about are, I don't think that this is medical care.
No.
And I don't think that this is treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think of these as bodily interventions. They're done to a body. I don't think of it as care. It's not caring for a person. Right. Yeah. But I've just tracking this, I'm so interested in what the other side also is saying right now. So they want to refer to this as trans people accessing healthcare.
Yeah. Yes, I've noticed that.
And so they want to pull it and say, oh, this isn't special. We just want trans people to get healthcare. And it's like, they're wanting us to phrase that as if we're saying like trans people who have the flu can't go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Or people with a broken arm can't get a cast.
Right.
Like, they're pivoting this. So it sounds like we're keeping necessary medical care away from a special cohort of people, trans people. Yeah. That is absolutely not true, but that's why they even want to get away from gender affirming care, because it doesn't play well anymore. So language is so interesting. It's part of how all of this capturing happened in the first place.
Yeah. I would even say that it depends who I'm talking to. If I know, if I get a general idea of who they are, like, how do I simplify this? If I'm talking to a MAGA contractor that I know, I'm going to say sex changes for kids.
Yeah.
If I'm talking to a liberal, I might say gender affirming care.
Right.
If I'm talking to maybe a more academic Republican, I might say sex rejecting procedures.
Yeah, that's been
a lot of the feminists really like sex rejecting procedures. It depends, but the important thing is when you're talking to someone, they know what you're talking about. You have to make
same thing.
Like, however you have, in my view, however I have to change my language to make you understand what I'm talking about, I'm not above doing that. Same way as if it's a non-starter that I don't use preferred pronouns with you, then okay, I'll use the preferred pronouns because I just need to get my point across. I need to just crack that understanding that you have. And the pronouns thing is a little harder because if you're a dude, it's very hard for me to she you. It's very, very hard.
Yeah. I know that you normally just go with names. If you
I usually will just use the name.
Yeah, I agree. But no, I mean, that's a strategy. And isn't that what we're all having to do is strategize, right?
Yeah.
We need to strategize. And sometimes it's meeting people where they are if we can. We've got a couple of questions here. One, I'll go to the one that came a couple of minutes ago from Val. Have you ever approached any formerly gay lesbian organizations that are now trans queer? And can there be any movement? Do you see any movement in those legacy organizations?
We troll them all the time. Constantly on social media.
Yeah.
I mean, I do anyway because I run a lot of social media. I do troll them. I do not see them backing off of this. No. I think they're going to have to be completely
defunded.
We have had people from those organizations on the sly talk to us and say you cannot have a conversation about this.
No,
you can't. And the people that were like the old school gays and lesbians have pretty much in these organizations already been weeded out. Like the lesbians 10 years ago were like, well, I don't want to share my bathroom with that guy. Yeah. They're already gone. Yeah. So it's we've been left with fanatics running multi-billion-dollar nonprofits.
Right. Yeah, they need to stop being funded. And also we all know that there's other organizations springing up that are refreshing. We just hit refresh and there's a new organization of people we can work with. But there was that one gay man who was interviewed and he's a former employee of something.
GLAAD. Yes.
GLAAD. And he spoke out and said, we should not be, this was our biggest mistake, was transitioning children, right?
He said one thing and then
one thing.
Not.
Yes, he's done. Okay, one and done.
Yeah.
Okay. Lou is asking what your thoughts are on trans ideology versus gender ideology, or either of those terms. Do you?
I mean, I think they're one and the same, really. And I don't think, and honestly, when trying to talk to a broad audience, I try to stay away from the calling it an ideology.
Yeah.
Instead of walking people into an understanding that it is an ideology.
Right.
Because when you do that, whether you call it trans ideology or gender ideology, it's just not received well.
Yeah.
From people.
It's a really good way to let somebody else, to signal to somebody else that is already gender critical, hey, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
But it's very coded. And so if you're trying to hit a general audience, it's going to be
right.
It's
some people shut down right away. Yeah. Well, you've got a lot of experience. You've got a lot of experience doing this. So obviously you came up with a lot of strategies and ways of operating. Let's see. I'm looking through my other questions here that. I find with the large organizations, like I became a member of EGAL, which is our organization in Canada, which is smaller, but I just send them responses to the stuff they send out. And I just say, as a woman and as a lesbian, and then I give them my feedback. And if they have questionnaires, I fill them out how I'm opposed to the stuff they're doing. They haven't stopped sending me stuff, so I'll just keep doing it. What about medical professionals, whether they're doctors or others? Are you seeing, somebody's asking about that, and are you seeing any change in any, like real change other than running away in fear of lawsuits, but people that are saying, hang on, I think I made a mistake here?
I do, because we go out in front of these conferences often, and 3 years ago, I was just hoping not to get stabbed in the eye, and now people will come out and have conversations with you. Like people were deadly afraid to even talk or engage with you 3 years ago. And now people will come out and have conversations. You have people saying, I'm working from within. Good for you. Thanks for being here. I do think there is a problem with cowardice and silence.
Yes.
I think this is a human problem, though. So at some point, we're going to hit critical mass. At some point, we're going to have enough people where people aren't afraid anymore, whether they're in the bluest of blue liberal cities or not. And we just got to keep slowly working to that critical mass because so many people are silently agreeing with us.
Yes.
Which is frustrating. It's frustrating.
It is.
And it's, I think, very frustrating when you start to have people who are like, oh, I was always with you. I was always on your side. Which
I know.
Critical mass is a smaller percentage than most people think.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Even Malcolm, who wrote The Tipping Point, Gladwell, his whole concept of what is the tipping point. I mean, I think it's closer to 30%, even if you can get, in a room of 10, if you can get 3 who are willing to side and agree to disagree, then you can tip. Even he came out and has said something about men and women's sports. So
you got a big pile on for something he said, but then maybe he corrected himself.
Yes. But I mean, I take solace in knowing that critical tipping points are actually smaller percentages than we think that they are. And you really you don't have to get 80%.
No.
You have to just get enough brave voices in a similar place to enact that change.
Well, and I think people have to decide what it is they're afraid of. If they're afraid of people thinking they're not nice or they're mean or they're afraid they'll lose a few friends, so what? Have at it. If they're afraid that, they've got kids and they've got a job and they absolutely need it and they're going to lose it.
Yeah, that's a different
calculus. But I think there's a lot of people, a lot of women don't like being disliked or being told that they're not kind. But I loved what you said, Jamie, about you enter the conversation with compassion and interest, and you don't enter with aggression. And I think that's a good overall strategy. Regardless of what you say, you can say it in a way that maybe makes people not, they might walk away, but they might have a conversation. They're not going to hit you. And
oh yeah, I'm the one chasing them down. Like, can I hug you for at least being willing to talk? I'm so thankful you were willing to talk to me.
Yeah.
And I'm always here, and people are just
and I'm in the back, like waiting for the bite to start.
But no, I really am sincere. Like I think people can change. I know that because I changed, and so
Yeah, that's right. And that's a good place. That's a good thing to tell people too. I was all in and then I learned a lot of things and firsthand, as close as you can get.
And there's a lot of people who are all in and have had that awakening moment. So like I said, it's frustrating when you are in it and you realize the like existential dread of what this actually is. And you're like, this needs to stop right now. Yeah. But really, I mean, in the last 10 years, it went from me not being able to say anything to anyone to like, we now go to cities and there is a group on the ground.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
There wasn't before. And there is now, even just in the last 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've gone from we're going in cold, we're the only ones there, to there's always somebody on the ground we can connect to.
Isn't that great? Yeah. Well, I don't want to take more of your time than you've already given us. We're set to wrap up at 12:30. It's 12:28. I'm just going to ask you if there's any last words you want to say before I thank you on behalf of everybody.
Our content, we strive to make sure our content is always free and available. So we run our Substack and we run a podcast, and our goal is really to just have content that's available, that's interactive, that's good quality, that has really, I think, interesting conversations and pieces to read. And we just want people to subscribe. And when you have the time, listen or read. One of the things I find so lovely is a lot of people now say that their Saturday mornings used to be listening to public radio.
Hmm.
And now they get up and they listen to our podcast as
Nice.
the way that they do their morning weekend chores or go out and garden. And I just want to continue to have that available for people.
Nice.
Yeah.
Lauren, anything from you?
Yeah, I would just like to add that we do have everything out there for free. If you have the $8 a month,
Yes.
if you have the $8 a month to subscribe, it really
course.
does make a difference. I mean, we are really being held up by those $8 a month
Yeah.
subscriptions, people that really care. It really does make a difference. We are fighting, not only are we fighting this war, but we're fighting against just an obscene amount of well-funded
Yes.
NGOs. And we are in this particular place where we are of the left, we are gay and lesbian positive. So the money that is fighting this is largely on the right and conservative, and we're not seeing any of it. So
yeah. No, I know you're doing so much for so little. So yeah, for those people who can contribute when you sign up for the podcast, but I am signed up. I get the stuff I have for a long time. I've found some great reading and some listening, and you have some fun on your podcast too, joking around before you bring the guests in, so people can know it's not all
doom and gloom.
Yeah.
No. They make fun of me and not knowing.
I know. So, it's it's a joy to have you here. I want to thank everybody else for coming and listening. Check out everything that Jamie and Lauren are doing at the Courage Coalition. And this will be recorded, or this has been recorded. When it is ready and posted, then it's available to share. And people will find that link through the Women's Space Vancouver website. And thank you very much for being here, you two.
Thank you for your work.
Okay. Have a great
day.
Yeah. Bye.